The people who work in animal shelters are not the problem. They went into this work because they love animals. They clean kennels and give medications and sit with frightened dogs at midnight. They do hard things because they believe it matters. And they're working inside a system that was never designed to succeed. A shelter exists to do a specific job. It's a community safety net for animals and for the people who live alongside them. It reunites lost pets with their families. It protects public safety when there's a dangerous situation with no other option. And it provides a humane last resort when an animal has nowhere else to go. That's the job. It's an important one, and when it's resourced and supported properly, it works. So what went wrong? In many communities, the measure of a shelter's success became a single number, the live release rate. How many animals got out alive? And when that number became the goal instead of the reflection of a goal, the mission started to drift. Shelters were advised to limit intake to protect their numbers, to stop picking up strays, to turn away owners who needed to surrender animals they could no longer care for. The number looked better. The animals didn't disappear. They moved somewhere the metric couldn't see. And the whole time, nobody was talking about the front door. Unregulated breeding kept replenishing the population faster than any shelter could manage. Backyard breeders, puppy mills, pet stores selling dogs from those mills, a continuous supply of animals entering a system already at capacity. The shelter was being asked to bail out a boat with a bucket while the hole in the hull went unaddressed. Responsible sheltering looks different. It looks like a whole community deciding that the number of animals in crisis is the problem worth solving and working backward from there. It starts before the shelter. Accessible spay and neuter is the most direct population-level intervention we have. Not appointment-based programs in well-resourced areas, mobile, community-embedded, free or near-free access in the neighborhoods and rural communities where the crisis is most concentrated. Addressing the breeding pipeline means closing the supply side. Local ordinances that regulate backyard breeding, pet store bans like those that have been passed in cities and states across the country with measurable impact. Holding the source accountable instead of just managing the overflow. Affordable veterinary care matters more than most people realize. A significant number of surrenders aren't happening because someone stopped loving their dog. They're happening because that person couldn't afford a $400 vet bill. Sliding scale clinics, low-cost wellness services, and humane societies that treat veterinary access as part of their mission, these keep owned dogs with the families who want them. Pet-friendly housing policies, one of the most overlooked drivers of shelter intake. Breed restrictions and size limits in rental housing force people to choose between their home and their dog. Advocating at the local level for pet-inclusive housing policy is animal welfare work. It keeps dogs out of shelters before they ever arrive. Proactive reunification recognizes at least some percentage of dogs in shelters aren't homeless, they're lost. Investing in microchipping, low-cost licensing, and active same-day efforts to find owners before a dog ever enters the system reduces intake without rationing access. Humane education is the long game, teaching responsible pet ownership, the importance of spay and neuter, and the real consequences of uncontrolled breeding in schools, in communities, delivered by trusted local voices. That changes the culture over time. It's not fast, but it's durable. Honest data is the foundation everything else stands on. If the only number a shelter reports is live release rate, the community never sees the actual problem. Intake trends over time, numbers of dead dogs picked up, population data from the surrounding community. These tell a real story. Shelters that report honestly, even when the numbers are hard, they're the ones that can actually ask for the right kind of help. And none of this works without adequately funded animal control. In too many rural counties, there's no animal control at all, or a single officer covering hundreds of square miles. This is a public safety failure and an animal welfare failure. It's also a choice, a budget choice that communities make every year without fully understanding the consequences. But what about the dogs in shelters right now? Well, all this work is still ahead of us. That's the hardest question, and it deserves an honest answer. When a shelter's overwhelmed, truly overwhelmed, not managing intake to protect a number, but genuinely full because the community around it has more dogs in crisis than it has resources to handle, keeping every animal alive is not always the most humane choice. A dog who's been in a kennel for 8 months, 14 months, 2 years shows us what it looks like. They stop eating. They spin in circles. They bark until their voices give out. They shut down completely, lying in the back of a kennel, unresponsive, unreachable. Shelter workers call it going kennel crazy. The clinical term is behavioral deterioration from chronic stress. What it looks like is a dog losing itself. Torture. The animal that came in, curious, attached, looking for its person, is gone. What's left is an animal in a state of sustained psychological collapse. And that dog is now also blocking a kennel that could hold a dog who still has a real chance. Warehousing dogs, keeping them alive in crowded, stressful conditions indefinitely is not compassion. It's the appearance of compassion. For a companion animal we domesticated and bred to live alongside us, that kind of existence is not a life. It's just slower suffering, as is leaving them on the streets to struggle for survival and become dangerous packs while spreading disease. A humane death, a genuinely peaceful, carefully considered decision made by people who are paying attention, is not suffering. It's the end of it. The suffering was everything that came before. This is not a failure of care. It's an act of it. And the people making those decisions deserve our respect, not our judgment. The goal, the only goal worth measuring, is a community that produces fewer dogs in crisis so that those decisions become rare. That's what responsible sheltering is working toward. So where do you start? You start local, and you start by asking questions. Attend your shelter's advisory board meeting or your city council budget session. Ask what your shelter's intake numbers look like year after year, not just the live release rate, but how many animals are coming in and where they're coming from. And the number of dead dogs, dogs hit by cars or other deaths, is a meaningful trend to track. Ask your candidates for local office where they stand on animal control funding. Push for pet-friendly housing policies at the municipal level. Support your local low-cost spay and neuter clinic directly, not a national campaign. The clinic in your county. Funding for this work exists. Local government budget allocations for animal control are the most direct level. This is a public service and it belongs in the public budget. State veterinary and agricultural departments have grant programs many communities never access. Community foundations fund local animal welfare work, and small targeted grants for spay and neuter, the model the Bissell Pet Foundation's Fix the Future program has built, deliver measurable impact per dollar in places that need it most. We need more programs like it, and we need them reaching deeper into the rural and low-income communities where the crisis is most concentrated. The resources are not unlimited, but they're more available than most people know. The barrier is usually awareness and advocacy, not impossibility. This is not a problem shelters can solve alone. It was never their problem to solve alone. A shelter is the last stop in a very long chain of decisions by breeders, by landlords, by local governments, by veterinary systems, by all of us. Responsible sheltering means the whole community takes responsibility for the whole problem. It means measuring what actually matters. It means investing in prevention instead of just managing the crisis after it arrives. The people in those shelters are ready to do their jobs. The question is whether we're ready to give them a system worth working in.